So on May 19th, 1916, with just 2 other people, Shackleton began his trek over the mountains, which were over 5,000 feet in elevation, and steep glaciers which could crack and break literally at any moment. They took about 3 days worth of food, and ingeniously put screws on the bottom of their boots to give them better traction when dealing with the steep snow. The first day would prove to be a waste, because they got lost on one of the thousands of mountains populating this island. They had no choice but to circumnavigate their way back in order to better continue for the next day. And then they tied themselves together with some leftover rope, and they basically slid down the mountain's steep descent. And yet after they did that, they were only greeted with 2,000-foot tall glacial cliffs and a 25-foot tall waterfall, all in which they had to cross. Their target was the small whaling station known as Stromness, but there was a problem. Shackleton had no clue if Stromness would even be populated. After all, most of the inhabitants would leave for the winter seasons. If no one was there, they could kiss any chances of survival goodbye. But these men took a look at their odds, and a familiar tune began to play in their minds. This was their best chance they had. Risks be damned. After a full 36 hours of climbing, sliding, and stumbling about, Shackleton looked out over the distance and saw Stromness. They staggered their way forward, could see some children playing, which elated these men. After all, if children were here, so would other people. Shackleton approached these children, who were justifiably terrified by what they saw. Remember that these men had just spent well over a year living on the ice, seeing the Endurance sink, sailing on a lifeboat for over 14 days, and then they just traveled over terrain which no man had ever traversed before. In no way did these men look like Hollywood heroes. Their faces were black, noses frostbitten, they had long and unkempt beards that were full of ice and snow, their jackets were horribly damaged and in tatters, they probably reeked. Any kid would look at these 3 men and be terrified by what they saw. They would look like creatures stumbling out of the darkness. And to add to everything, these men had just come from the south. Who in their right mind would travel over those mountains in this type of weather? So no one at all expected Shackleton and his men to arrive. Nevertheless, Shackleton reported to the station manager, the same station manager he had met 2 years before while starting his mission. And this station manager did not recognize this thin, skanky-looking man approaching him. "Who the hell are you?" he calls out. "My name is Shackleton," replied the leader of the Endurance Expedition. Shackleton turned away and began to cry.